I have logarithms on the mind this week. Stay tuned and we're going to show you the graphs of logarithms. Hello again, mathletes. It's Mr. Nolde with Planet Numeracy. We're going to be talking about logarithmic functions today. Specifically, we're going to be looking at their graphs. And what's cool about these is you can move them right and left, the same as you did like with, say, quadratic functions, and they can be moved up and down. They can be flipped across an axis, a y-axis, x-axis. And if you remember all of those moves from quadratics, it will make total sense to you here with the logarithm graphs. So stay tuned. So what you're looking at is the graph of a logarithm. Specifically, this purple graph, this is a logarithm. This graph up here, this is an exponential function. So these exponential functions are, this one was y equals 2 to the x. And that's what it graphed like. The purple one down below is log base 2 of x. So it is undoing this function up here. So because this is a one-to-one function, that means it passes the horizontal line test. It's going to have an inverse. So in the inverse, if you remember from other sections, the inverse graphs across this, drawing it as straight as I can. This is y equals x. So that's like the mirror that the logarithmic function and the exponential function are reflected across with each other. So another way of thinking about it is that this undoes this. So let's say I had, if I go 1 and then I go up 2. Well, that is going to correspond to going up, going right 2 and up 1. So remember that the domain of, I should do that in the right color. The domain of the domain of the logarithmic function is all real numbers. Right? I can type in anything from negative x to positive x on my calculator, but the range is only going to go from 0 to infinity, positive infinity. So if we know about the logarithm functions, these just get reversed. So the domain for logarithmic functions is 0 to infinity. So it starts at 0 over here, and it's going to infinity in that direction. And then the range of the logarithmic function was the domain of the exponential function. So that's kind of what's going on here. These are just undoing each other. So if you're wondering where I got these graphs from, been experimenting, I made them online at Desmos.com. And in fact, they have a free app for your iPhone or your Android. So all my students have downloaded this for use in the classroom. So in any event, let's look at what we can do to logarithmic graphs. All right, so we can start by looking at a simple graph of function of x, f of x equals log base 3 of x. So we know what this is going to look like. It's a base 3 log. We're just trying to sketch it. That's what I tell a lot of my students. Sketching it looks like this. So this function would come like this, and it would look something like that. So ordinarily, you could type this in on a graphing calculator or on Desmos. But if you're just looking for a sketch of the graph, they're not actually saying to plot points, which you could plot a couple of points here. But we don't really have to do that because we're just looking for a sketch of the graph. So now, keep this in mind, the log base 3 of x, when we look at the next question. Now, this is the log base 3 equation graph that we looked at on the last slide. So it's right here, log base 3 of x. But notice what's being done here is we're adding 2. And what happens when you add 2 is just like the every other function we've looked at so far, it just moves this 2 units up. So if I were to graph this whole thing with the 2, it would start, down here, and this would be 2 units up. So that's all you're doing, okay? You're just horizontally shifting it. If this had said minus 2, then it would have been moved down 2 units. So that's for moving these functions up and down. So now we're looking over here, we're looking at a sketch of log base 2 of x. But what we're doing is we're putting a minus 4, but it's in the parentheses. It's not outside the parentheses. So we're not going to be moving it down. Rather, we're going to be moving it to the right, because it's just like the quadratic functions were. If we had written this out based on the formula from that, it's going to the right 4. So I'm just going to move this right 4 units. So it would, come over here and kind of look like this. It's not exact, it's just a sketch, but this is, this minus 4 moves the function to the right 4 units, the same as a quadratic got moved to the right when you saw a minus sign here. All right, let's look at 2 more. By the way, if this was a plus x, it would have gotten shifted 4 units to the left. But the minus pushes it to the right. A plus here would push it to the left. So now we're looking at f of x equals negative log of x. So over here I sketched log of x. This is the log of x. But when you want to flip something, when you want to change the sign of a function, what you're doing is flipping it across this x-axis. So it ends up looking, this function ends up flipping and looking like this. So it's like kind of a mirror image going across the x-axis here. So this is the same as what we did with quadratics. Right, so here I sketched a graph of the parent function log base 5 of x. It would go like this. The only thing we notice here is there's a minus sign right there. So when we had the minus sign out here, it was reflected across the x-axis. Just like with the quadratic functions, when the minus sign is inside the parentheses, not on the y but on the x, it gets flipped across the y-axis. So this graph would look something like this. Drawing it as carefully as I can to look like it's the mirror image of this one. So this didn't get shifted to the left. This got flipped. So this was like the flip point, the kind of like the mirror, I call it. So we can do all the same things to the logarithm graphs that we can do to other graphs, including the quadratic function graphs. So that I thought would be pretty interesting to you. And in the future, we're going to be looking at trigonometric function graphs. And all these rules that you're learning are going to apply there as well. Pretty awesome. So there you go. Those are your logarithm graphs, what you can do with logarithm graphs. Hopefully you gotten value out of this. Share it with somebody you know. Go ahead and hit the like button. That would be very helpful. And as always, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Remember, math is not a spectator sport. This is something that in your pre-calc class, you're going to have to do the assignments that are assigned. If you have any questions with those assignments, please feel free to email me or to post them in the comments down below. And I'd be happy to look at those and put them online here for you. All right, until next time, have an awesome weekend.